Hello YouTube! Today we are going to have another look into Next.js API Routes. If you watched part number 4 of our Next.js tutorial, this code over here should be quite familiar, and this represents probably the easiest possible Next.js API route. Independently of the method being a get, a post, a put, a delete, etc., we are always going to return a status 200 and this list of users in line number 2. And that works for a lot of scenarios. But imagine you want a RESTful API. You will have to end up with something like if else or a switch case. Something like this. We have a case for the get, and on the get we do something with the get method. If it is a put, we have line 12 to line 15, and then if it's not a get or a put, we need to notify our clients saying, hey, look, we don't accept the method you are trying to call. For example, a delete. We don't accept a delete. And having to repeat this in a lot of places can be a bit tedious and it can lead you into errors. So for the last couple of months, I have been using Next.Connect and I like the experience, and so I want to share it with you. And in Next.Connect, you can have an API really similar to what you have in express.js. For example, you can have Next.Connect, and then we have a get method, and inside that one, we do whatever we want for the get. If we don't put any other method over there, by default, it will return an error message for our client. So without any further ado, let's jump into VS Code and let's start to play with Next.Connect. Over here in VS Code, I already went ahead and created a table with some Formula 1 drivers. You can see their name and how many titles they have. If we want to create an endpoint with all the world champions, we will need to have a query like this, select star from driver, where the number of titles is bigger than 0. So let's go to Postman and try this one. And we will have a get for API/champions. We are executing that one, and as you may expect, we got all the world champions over here. If I try to execute a post, for example, it will still work, but that's probably not what you want. You only want this endpoint to work with get methods. Let's go to the other example we also saw in the Next.js examples, and you can see that over here we are doing something similar, but this time with switch cases, or if else if you prefer, where we are executing code for get over there, for post over here, and if it's neither a post or a get, you just return a 405 saying that method is not allowed. Let's go back to our world champions, and over here let's start to use Next.Connect to make sure that it only works for get requests, and then we will start to work on that with middlewares and things like that. All right, so let me import Next.Connect from Next.Connect, and the only thing we need to do over here now is to do the following. Export default Next.Connect, and immediately after we can say get, and the get receives a function with request response, like we have this one already here receiving. All right, and we need to say that this will be an asynchronous one, and we can put the body of this function in that new one. We can delete this bit, and when we save, you can see that the only problem we have at the moment is that status is not valid in the type of server response. But this shouldn't be a server response. This should be a Next API response. And Next.Connect allows us to use generics over here to do the following. Next API request, Next API response. And now the request is the type we expect, and the response is also the type we expect. So that's great, and that will work for us. Now, let me save this bit, and when I save that bit, I can just go over here to Postman, execute this post, oops, something happened, execute with Postman this one, and it will say not found, because we no longer support posts. That's good. Let me just check if get is still working, and get is still working. But what if you don't like this message for the post and you want to say something more personal instead of saying a 404 and a not found text? Well, Next.Connect have you covered. So over here we can pass an object, and this object can have two properties. One is onError, and the other one is the one we care about now, which is the onNoMatch. We will use that one. The first property is the request, the second one is the response, and the third one, if you are using middlewares, is the next middleware. We will speak about that next in 5 minutes probably. All right, so over here the only thing we need to do is paste the code from our previous drivers file, and now it will have a more personalized one. You can come over here, click, and now you have the status code 405, so method not allowed, and you are sending a better message. Usually I like to send JSON all the time, but you are not forced to send JSON all the time. I just prefer to do it. So I will start to send JSON over there. Now, imagine that I create a new method for a post. For example, we have the request and the response. And over here, when you are opening your database connection or something like that, an error happens. Let's say that you have an error and oops, something happened, right? Sorry. Imagine that your connector or something like that with your database triggers an exception. By default, Next Connect will handle that for you. So we can come over here and it says, oops, something happened, sorry, with the status code of 500. We can, like we did before, customize that one. So let's come over here on the onError, and the only difference with this one is the first parameter is the error itself. So we will do the error itself, the second one is the request, the third one is the response, and once again you have the next middleware if you want to, right? The only reason we are not using the next in both scenarios is in this one we immediately send the response back to our client, and we will do the same over here. So I can even copy this one, and now just to have a different code instead of 500, I will say 501, which is not implemented, for you to see a different status code. And over here we can say something like, sorry, something happened. Oops, happened. And now you will see kind of the same repeated message because that's what we already have at the bottom, but let's just put error message. Going now to Postman, clicking over there, you see that nice message, and as you see, you can customize it. You can even put a timestamp or something like that if you want to, an error code if you are doing that in your application. The possibilities are infinite for what you can do over there. Now, the next question that you may have is, all right, Bruno, we created nice logic over there, but how to make it available to everyone? So I don't want to make this logic everywhere. So let me copy this one, go to the source and create a new file I will call handler. And I will just do a paste of this. And now I will just use the imports from VS Code. And this one now is ready for us to use anywhere else in our application. Let's just go to the champions and delete all of these and just import our handler. So everything should be working the same in our champions. Let's try and make sure this one is still returning the same error. The get is still working the same way. So we have all the world champions. So it's now time for us to go to the drivers and make the drivers with this format as well. Let's just copy this bit because it's just a bit faster. And I will just do the following. And post will be an asynchronous function as well. All right. And now the only thing we need to do is copy the bodies. So let me copy the body for the get, the body for the post. And I will say that this code is now much easier to read and to understand, at least in my opinion. All right. You can clearly see everything for the get is over there. Everything for the post is over here. So let's make sure that our get and our post are working. Let's just go over here and call it drivers on our get, and we should receive all the drivers, which is correct. And let's do a post. And I have a post already prepared here for us. So it will be Ayrton Senna with 3 titles. We click send and we receive the object back with a status 201, which is what we are doing over here. We are creating. grabbing the last ID and sending it back to our client, which is perfect. Now, if I do a get once again, Ayrton Senna should be the last one in the list. And it is. Ayrton Senna is there with 3 titles. So up to this moment, everything seems to be working. We can even try, for example, a put just to see that our handler is still saying the same message. So everything is working. The next thing that you may want to do, and I like to do that quite a lot, is coming to jwt.io and let's create a new payload, a decoded data for us, right? I already prepared this one, but we can even change this one. It's literally up to you. But for the moment, I created a new token with a user ID and a name. And the user ID is 9865. We can even say something easier, which is 1234. It's much easier to understand. And the secret, I just used Bruno secret. Not the best approach ever, but let me explain why I love Next Connect. One of the ways I love it is now we can make something generic in our handler over here using a middleware, right? So it's the use, and we will use the use. I doubled the word over there. And now in every single place, we will be able to say something like rec.username and use it and user ID. And this can be super powerful to you. So let's go over here to our handler and let's do the following. Use request response and the next. As I said before, we were going to use it in 5-10 minutes, and now we are starting to use this next. So what we need to do, even before we go forward, you will see that if I go to champions and I say request.userid, it doesn't exist because this request is of type Next API request. Let's just do something in order for it to work. Let's grab this one and let's do export interface Next API request extended, for example. If you are working in a company like Google, you can call Google request or something like that, right? Extends Next API request. And now we will say user ID, which will be a string, not a string, sorry, a number or null. And if you want, you can have the username, which will be a string or null as well. You can even create an object for the user if it makes more sense for you. It's up to you, right? So over here now I'm just setting them over there, but if you prefer to have an object, you could do something like this, right? So user ID, number or null, and the username, string or null, right? It's up to you. For now, I will prefer to have the request.userid and request.username, but again, completely up to you. So what do we need to do over here? We will grab whatever we have in here, we will go to Postman and we will go to the headers, and in the headers we will add an authorization header, right? And the authorization header will be that bit. When we do this, nothing will happen because, well, we are in the state that we are here infinitely forever, right? So let me just remove this from there and let's go back to the handler and think what we need to do. So we will grab the authorization token. So authorization token is equal to request.headers, right? And now if we don't have authorization token, we probably want to go to the next piece of middleware already, right? So we want to go to the next piece of middleware. We can just do something that usually I like to do just to make sure that the user ID is null and the request.username is also null. Because sometimes it may happen that somewhere else in your middleware, someone set it up, and then when you do next, you will have a user ID which is not you are expecting. So just to make sure we can clear it, you can also clear with an undefined. I'm now clearing with a null because that's what I put there as well. So if then we have an authorization token, we can come over here and start to use the verify from JSON Web Tokens, right? And the first parameter, let me just import this one. Did I import that? Wrong package, JSON Web Token. And the first one will be the authorization token. All right. The second one will be my secret. And in a real application, you shouldn't use this Bruno secret. You should use something like process.env.secret, right? But for now, it will do the trick. Then we will have an error, which I will just type as any, and the decoded object, which I will type as any as well. Now, what do we need to do over here? If we don't have errors and we have the decoded, then we can do request.userid equals to decoded.userid, and the request.username equals to decoded. I think I called it only name. Let me just confirm. Yes, I called it only name. So let me come, oops, wrong place. Let me come over here and just do that. And no matter if we got an error or we got the right decoded, we just move forward to the next middleware. So with that in place, I think we are good to go and try if everything is working before we start to test it in the championships and the drivers. So let's come over here. Probably we need to kill Postman. Let me say Postman once again. And Postman will start for us. And when Postman starts, we will try, for example, the drivers once again. So let me just go over here to the get. And when I do the drivers, I got all the drivers and everything seems to be working as expected. We still have the authorization over there. So let me just do a trick for us. Let me go to drivers. And now instead of returning all the drivers, I will do name, which is request.username, and the user ID, which will be the request.userid. And then we also return the drivers. And I'm seeing that we forgot one thing. We created the new API, but we didn't use it. So now we are going to use it, right? And now we can use that one, come over here to Postman, execute it, and you can see that we already got the name and the user ID, which is perfect, right? Let me just go to the JSON Web Tokens and change from John Doe to Bruno Antunes, and the ID is, for example, 9976. We will copy this, go back to Postman, change this to have that new one, and now you can see my name and a specific user ID. You can see how much it can simplify your life. Let me just go to show you one more example before we finish the video, and let's say that in this post over there, we will do the following. If request dot username or user ID, whatever you define, right? Let's say the user ID, and in a real application, you can even say that the instead of being the user ID is probably the role, right? If the user has the role to create something, then you can execute. If the user doesn't have the role to create something, you block them from the creation. So in this case, I will say if the user is 1234, or if it is not 1234, which is the main admin of our application, then we will just do res.status 401 JSON, and we will say message, sorry, you are not 1234, right? And we need to return, because otherwise it will still run all of this code, and when we reach here, we will get a problem. So don't forget to put that return over there, or do the opposite validation and put an else. It will also work. It's up to you. So if we come over here and we now try to do a post, and let's go to our body and say, instead of being Ayrton Senna, let's say Jensen Button, and he has one world title, 2009. So when we click over here, we say, sorry, you are not 1234. So let's go to our JWT, call ourselves 1234, grab this token, go back to Postman, to the headers, change this one, and now when we do that, you will see that JSON button was there. We can do the get, send, and JSON button should be at the bottom now. So as you can see, this is really, really powerful. Now with a single change to use Next Connect, you have already your user ID, your username, and the possibilities are almost infinite. You can keep using more and more of those use, and you have almost infinite middle layers you can add to your application. So I hope this video was helpful, and if you like the video, please like it, share with your friends, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.